Obviously, hard work is not the solution. Good decision making and high leverage is the solution. Having a peaceful mind, being a happier person, relying less on momentary pleasure and being calmer in general will allow you to have the frame of mind where you make better decisions. It will actually increase your effectiveness. As long as the increase in effectiveness is higher than the reduction in drive, you're well off. Finally, I would say, do you want to be the best in the world by working the hardest? Or do you want to be the best in the world who worked the least for it, right? Who worked the most intelligently for it? If you were an omniscient, omnipotent being, imagine you were the universal God for a moment, then just by pushing a butterfly in one direction or just by snapping your fingers, you would know exactly how the particles would collide from there on out that would change everything in the universe. You could get anything done. Omniscience is omnipotence. Knowledge is power. Through pure knowledge, we can achieve happiness, and that happiness will actually increase our decision-making capability. It'll give us more time to read. It'll make us more knowledgeable about how we and other people operate. It will make us more effective. It will increase our judgment, and it should increase our earnings and the returns that we need to be financially free. In some very deep level, all pleasure creates its own offsetting pain and fear of loss on the other side. I had a tweet recently where it said, in an age of abundance, pursuing pleasure for its own sake creates addiction. I was upgrading an old Miyamoto Musashi line. Do not pursue pleasure for its own sake. Musashi, he was a Japanese swordsman. In his time, when you pursued pleasure, it might mean a very different thing. He didn't have unlimited processed food. He didn't have internet pornography, marijuana, or alcohol available on demand. Now that we're in an age of abundance, if we pursue pleasurable things directly for their own sake, we land into addiction very easily, which is hard to get out of. I think the modern struggle is really about lone individuals disconnected from their tribe, disconnected from their religions, disconnected from their cultural networks, trying to stand up to all these things that have been weaponized: alcohol, drugs, pornography, processed foods, news media, internet, social media, video games. With these things, you can basically engage in fake play and fake work. Before, you would have to go socialize with your friends. Now you just get drunk with a bunch of strangers and it's easy and good. Before, you would have had to go find a mate and have sex and create children and raise a family. Now you just watch a lot of porn. Before, you might have needed to go climb trees and hunt and get fruit for a little bit of natural sweetness. Now you can just buy all the gelato that you want. The modern struggle not only is trying to stand up to these things that are weaponized, that are giving you small doses of pleasure, but desensitizing you and exposing you to the misery of their loss and their absence. If you drink alcohol, or if you take some kind of drug regularly, try the following thought experiment. What events do you most look forward to? I will bet you they're the events where you get to do these things. So if you drink alcohol, you look forward to dinner time, or you look forward to that party that's coming up, or when you get to go out with your friends to the bar. To see how artificial it is, resolve that the next one you go to, you're not going to drink at all, or you're not going to do the drug. And now ask yourself, how much am I looking forward to that event? You'll find not at all. This creates a conundrum. If I give up these sources of artificial pleasure that can lead to addiction and desensitize me or just bring misery down on me later by missing them, then I'm miserable because I don't get to socialize with anybody. I don't have fun. I don't go out. Breaking addictions is very hard, not just because you have to break the physical addiction, but because you then also have to change your lifestyle to the lifestyle that you would be happy without that substance. For example, if I want to drink because I get to hang out with friends and be social, and I do that enough, and pretty soon I'm hanging out with a whole bunch of friends that I actually would not hang out with sober. I can't tolerate these people sober. I can't tolerate these topics sober. I can't tolerate these venues sober. I can only do it drunk. Well, if I stop drinking, then what happens? I have to get rid of these friends. I have to get rid of these activities. I have to find brand new activities and brand new friends. This is very hard and very socially unacceptable. These fake relationships and these fake activities were just being held together by the alcohol. I realized a while back that it's actually a problem to really look forward to holidays and to weekends, because it indicates two things. One is it takes the joy out of the everyday, because now you're living in the future. You're suffering the rest of the time. And the second is it means you have accepted a way of life in which most of your time is spent suffering. Let's talk about peace, and then we'll talk about truth and how these all relate to happiness. A lot of times when I'm saying you want to be happy, what I'm actually saying is you want to find peace. We say peace of mind, but what we really want is peace from mind. The moments of greatest pleasure, whether from doing a drug or having an orgasm, or you're kite surfing and you find the edge, or you're laughing with somebody, or you're looking at some incredible sunset. What happens in all of these is the mind goes quiet. The mind calms down. That voice in your head where you're talking to yourself goes silent for a moment. And then you go into a sense of awe or beauty or bliss or joy or pleasure. All of us seek this. All of us chase it. Deep down, what we're actually looking for is peace from our mind. I'm not making the mind out to be an enemy. The mind is a very useful tool. But somewhere along the way, it became an uncontrollable tool. It became a master rather than just a servant. Our mind is evolved to be paranoid, fearful, and angry. We are the most paranoid and angry creatures to ever walk this earth. Human beings are apex predators at the top of the food chain. We killed, subjugated, or domesticated every other species on this planet. And we did it through fear and violence and, of course, cooperation. But we've killed everything else. We've tamed everything else. We were scared enough to go fight it, kill it, and own it. Nature is brutal. Turn on any nature documentary and you'll see A eats B, B eats C, C eats D, D eats E, and nature is red in tooth and claw. We are derived from violence and blood. Modern society is a lot safer. Yes, it still makes sense to be careful and to be paranoid. It still makes sense occasionally to get angry, but not all the time, not as much as we're hardwired to do. Modern society is safer and more peaceful, so it's okay to dial it down. The threat level is not as high as our genes think it is. If you were walking through the woods 1,000 years ago with a friend and you thought you heard a tiger rustling in the bushes, let's say 9 out of 10 times it's a rabbit, 1 out of 10 times it's a tiger. Well, the person who's an optimist catches a rabbit 9 out of 10 times, it gets eaten the 10th. The person who's a pessimist stays alive every time. Pessimism is rewarded in our evolved nature, but we live in much safer times. So we have to find ways past that. We have to find ways towards peace. Modern life, on the other hand, is more hectic in other ways. The sources of stress that we have are more chronic. Let's define stress for a moment. Physically, stress is when something wants to be in two places at one time. If I take an iron beam and apply pressure to both ends in different directions, I'm creating stress in the beam because one part wants to be north, the other part wants to be south. I create stress on the beam. In a person, stress is when you can't decide what's important, so then you want two things at once that are mutually incompatible. I want to relax right now, but I need to get some work done. I'm under stress. I need to go to that party, but I also need to go to work. But when you truly give up on something, it's actually no longer stressful. When you accept that something is completely out of your control, there's no point in being stressed about it. So it does imply that you have some level of control over it. The mind is constantly creating stress for you through situations where it's being more paranoid or more angry than is actually warranted for your environment. We